Welcome back to St Eugene's Cathedral Hall here in Derry for the second of our conversations in the week leading up to Vocation Sunday, Good Shepherd Sunday, the fourth Sunday of Easter coming up at the weekend. Last night we had a young couple reflecting on their sense of vocation, called to be a married couple. This evening we have someone who's spent so much of his life with a real passion for working with young people. Martin McLaughlin is from the city here, has lived all his life in the city, one of a large family of 15.
15 in total, yes.
In Cregan. And he's a real passion for working with young people, and very specifically in the context of the search movement, which is very strong in the city here and does enormous amounts of outreach and has done down through the decades. So I'd just like to spend some time with Martin this evening, who actually has written a book during lockdown on his story living in the city and growing up as an ordinary person and then discovering faith at a later stage in his life and his commitment to youth work. Martin, you're very welcome. Thank you for coming along.
Thank you very much
this evening. I hope we'll have a conversation.
Yeah.
I've known you now really since I came to Derry. You were one of those people who's prominent in working with young people and a real passion for them and really prepared to fight so that young people can get the best that we can offer them here. Where did all that passion for young people come from? What was your own experience growing up?
I think even you saying the word fight, and it came from a role model of mine which I developed in the St. Don Bosco. And, whilst I recognise that the seeds of the Spirit are supposed to be given to us in baptism, which they are in confirmation, I suppose it is the seed and it comes to, to be nourished as we get older and so on. 10 years of age, I was sitting watching my mother and father and some friends playing a hand of whist, which was an old person's game, I think. And this old lady, Beezy Donaghy, from just up the top of Milmore where I lived.
Beezy
Donaghy. It sounds fictitious, but it's not. It was real. And Beezy came in and she handed me this 4-inch, 700-page book, and she said, "You need to read that book. It's meant for you."
And you were 10 years of age?
I was 10 years of age. I actually wrote about that book. Back in that time, we had a choice of writing about a book in our 11 plus, and I mind writing about the book to the best of my ability, even though the book at that stage, again, was just a seed. So Beezy gave me the book, and I read it because in those times, we weren't allowed to disobey our elders. Times have changed so much. So I read it because Beezy said, "You must read this book."
And there wasn't so much in terms of television in the 50s and 60s.
There wasn't, and certainly if there was, it was black and white TV and quite limited to what you could watch. But that book didn't have a big effect on me then. But you know what did have an effect on me, and as I look back on it now, was I believe giving is hereditary. I believe giving is like addiction. It can be in the family. And when I was a day boy at college and taking sandwiches down to the Borders, some of you might remember, my mother would have put in a double dose of sandwiches for the Borders, and my mother, without me recognising it, and my daddy, who was crippled at the time, but always running buses to Knock and Benburb and doing well for the community. So they were givers, and whether I wanted to be or not, I inherited the gift of giving. I really believe that, and that's a boast for God and for my parents, not a boast for me. So the book, in effect, didn't have a big impact when I was 10. As I grew older and started to play football, which became my God, the book also grew within me. And then I thought, how can I repay this book? How can I repay this great St. Don Bosco? And inevitably, as some people would know, myself and a few colleagues had started up the St. Don Bosco Football Club in the city, which still exists now. I don't belong to it anymore. One of the better teams in the city, let me add. And we had a great following. And it was Christian, it was Catholic, it was everything that family should be. It was different. It really was different. But it wasn't that different for me because there wasn't much Christianity in it for me, because I was a winner at all cost. And when I went out in the football field, you could have been my friend on a Saturday and my enemy on a Sunday if you're playing against me. If I'm going on too much here, you stop me.
No, I'm listening carefully.
But so I'm still looking for this unidentified package of Holy Spirit that I got at baptism, and I'm now rolling along. Football, by the way, was taken out of my life. I got a nasty accident. I'd signed for Derry City. I got a nasty accident on the right knee, which couldn't be repaired at the time. And suddenly it was junior football or nothing, so the senior status.
And this was Derry City in the Irish League rather than the League of Ireland at that
was
stage?
Derry City, and the match that I got hurt in was against the Distillery team.
The Whites.
And it was about 1968, I think, I guess.
And
Well,
Martin O'Neill certainly would have played for the Whites at the stage.
Martin O'Neill was coming behind me a couple of years in the college, that's right.
Yeah.
And Raymond White got him, Raymond was
Yeah.
two Distillery men. So maybe, I don't know whether God had ordained that, but suddenly then the football became unimportant to me. As I shared with some people, my trinity back then was Busby, Law and Best. Now, I still believe
Matt
in
Busby,
God. Matt Busby,
Dennis Law and
Dennis
George
Law and
Best.
I went to Mass every day back then, and I did all the retreats and Stations of the Cross probably every day, because that's how we lived. But it didn't have the same impact. Football was certainly my priority. So, then comes along Curcio movement, and 30 years of age. I'm now 30 and I'm still playing football junior.
And you had been obviously working in the meantime.
I started work at 18, thank God, in DuPont,
Yeah.
and it was about 7 or 8 years there before I went into selling oil, and that's where I've been then for the last 40 years with different oil companies.
And Curcio came across your path
A big fella
at 30.
just passed away lately, Ding Cassidy. I just seen a transformation in Ding that I just could not understand. I said, I want some of that. And Ding had recognised the character in me from playing football, and he advised me or coaxed me into going on a Curcio weekend. My life was transformed. Curcio was a powerful outlet for me to discover a new image of God, a God that loved me. I won't go into it now, and if you want to hear about it, you can read it in the book. Not yourself, but it can be read in the book. But I mean, it not only changed my life, it changed my mother's life, which I'll not go into now, but it really did turn me into a person that wanted to question, where can I get a deeper understanding of this guy, Jesus? I really did. And then when I found that, I thought, you know what, I'm 30, and I'm working with young people. I developed a part-time youth worker degree as well, out of St Mary's Youth Club, the new youth association, which has now been again reconstructed. But I thought, why do you have to wait to 30 years of age to find this understanding of a God of love? And I thought, there must be something out there. And lo and behold, my father used to run buses to Knock. From I was 5, I've been going to Knock. Again, loved all the experiences. And back then, when I was 5, going to Knock meant leaving at 6:30 in the morning.
And there were bumpy oil roads on the way down and the way back.
I'm back at 2 o'clock the next morning. So Knock was in there somewhere as well, and all of a sudden there's a guy, George McCann. He was an old boxing coach friend of mine, and George rings me during the heavy troubles, and he said, "You have a lot of experience with Knock. You've got some experience with youth work. Would you help us to take a busload of kids, teenagers, away to Knock for a day out of Derry?" Now those lads, and they've allowed me to use in some cases hoods, would have went to hell for a day free if they were getting it. So,
and this was the early 80s, I take it,
this
was
is
it?
1983.
Yeah, and
1983.
There was not long after the hunger strikes and those terrible times.
Absolutely. And I had just done the weekend in 1980. I was 30, so it was, I think, the second weekend ever, at Curcio weekend. And suddenly here, Knock's coming up, and it's youth and it's whatnot. And I then met a wee nun, sister evangelist, who happened to have heard of a search program in Canada, where she had experienced the search program. And she said, "I've got the real program for you young people." And we rode away to America, the Curcio people in America, asking them would they send on some literature on the Curcio movement for young people that they had, which was a search program. Not only did they send it on, but they sent pioneers over here to kind of suss out our wee group. And the trip to Knock was 32 young people from Craigan in the middle of troubles. The following week, through word of mouth, youth relating to youth, the following week in the upper room in St Mary's Community Centre in Craigan, there was 128 young people.
Hungry for something.
Hungry for something. And the young people that had Knock experience, they just came back bubbling. They wanted more. They identified us as people who, through the power of the Holy Spirit, could see their soft spots, even though they weren't soft. They were hard, they were tough. They were at some of the antisocial activities. Back then, glue sniffing and mushrooms and that sort of stuff. And hence our Lady of Knock Youth Group was formed in, I think it was October 1983. And then when the Curcio program, young program through Search came in, Search, by the way, and people don't know this, Search is just simply Search for Christ. So we felt here's a deeper way of bringing a Christ relationship into young people's lives. And that was on the 4th of July, 1985. American Independence Day, 50 Americans land here in the Shannon. Travels all the way by coach to Buncrana School, Murrah. I think the head then was Sister Patrick. And sleeping on floors, and even the priests sleeping in I think they slept in the joinery class on a floor. We readjusted the school. It was during the summer, so the school wasn't being used. And that was the beginning of Search.
This was a weekend program for the young people.
Residential weekend, very similar to the adult Curcio group, a day less, obviously a few talks less as well. All the same principles of just nourishing people's body, mind and soul about this guy Jesus. Yeah.
And being loved and being forgiven and forgiving and having hope and
absolutely. And
processing that pain of being human that affects everybody in different ways.
And luckily enough, a contract was drawn up back then because of my youth work experience, and we're up in Termonbecca as it turned out to be, and Father Michael McGoldrick, who's now back in Termonbecca, yes, was the man, the spiritual director who sat down with us and drew up a contract with us. And the contract simply entailed, we're going away for a day. You take part in the prayer activity and we'll make sure you have a good time on the way back. And we organised a disco in Tubbercurry and a special meal for the young people in Tubbercurry with the Ribbley dance. There was only 32 of them, mixed gender, all supervised, and the Ribbley danced the night away to about 12 o'clock in Tubbercurry, and they just thought this was great. And it got them out of Derry for a time when all they knew was bombs and bullets and whatnot else, and it got them out of Derry for a time. But when Search came in, it was a new dimension. It really was. Because, and for anybody who's done the Search or Curcio program as an adult, they'll know what I'm talking about. People just wanted more of it, and they wanted to give more of it.
And obviously, there are lots of youth clubs and entertainments for young people, but Search is very specifically based on the belief that coming to know the love of God, coming to know Jesus, coming to know the Holy Spirit adds a whole new dimension to energy and life and hope and joy and peace for them.
Again, the Don Bosco philosophy, being the role model, is fun and prayer. He believes, for anybody that knows his story, and I didn't at 10, he believed that the way to attract young people was through fun and games and tightrope walking and all that went with it, and then teach them to pray. And Search is a big mixture of all of that. It's all about fun, about games, about education. It's developed not through me now, thank God. We have a bunch of young volunteers there at the minute, young leaders. And I quote different people like Patsy McKinnon, Damon McAdams, Sean Gallagher, who have come and seen our weekend, who say there's no better youth leaders anywhere in Ireland than what we've got. And I believe that. I believe that because it's God, Spirit-driven. And there's a lot of fun in it. There's a lot of games in it. There's a lot of activity, entertainment, and there's a deep prayer in it as well. And everything we do, even for the young children on the summer schemes, which used to be down in Gaelic, initially started by Monsignor Brian McCanny back in the day, and carrying on from, I think it's about the year 2000, so 21 years ago now, and we're still running summer schemes for primary school children. And all of that is based on fun and sacraments. So it's very much a Catholic Christian program for young people, from start to finish.
And you clearly have a huge passion for that, Martin. I mean, but it must take energy and must take time and must have, I don't know, sleepless nights and early mornings and late nights and all of that. But you have a passion for it. You have a sense this is what I'm called to be doing as much as I can. You
opened up my mind to when we started. We went to see a man whom you've had up here speaking in the cathedral in the last year and a half. He's a great book writer, Father Pat Collins.
Yes.
And the priest in Craigan at the time where we were formed, he said to us, you need to go and talk to this man. He's the best youth administrator in the whole of Ireland. You need to go and talk to him. He was doing a retreat in Ballymagordy. So three of us went down, Alec, George McCann, myself, Alec Hutton, to see this man. And he pulled a great stroke on us. We went round and saw him after the retreat, and we told him we're about to start a Christian Catholic youth group. And his first punch back at us was, forget about it. And you talk about my passion, and maybe I call it a bit of holy boldness, again, which came from my mother. I said, Father, I'm disappointed in you. I said, we've been told so much about you, and now you're telling us to forget about something that's very important to us. And he took me by the lapel and he said to me, now we can talk. He said, if I tell 10 people to forget about it, 9 will forget about it. But he said, I can see that you're passionate. And we were. It was driven. And he sat us down, and we had and he gave us great direction in what we should be doing. And he did, just to, you alluded to it a second ago, he did say, let me warn you, this is going to be a tough journey. They'll kick you when you're down, but, and it was a big but, it's the most beautiful ministry in the world. And it is. And he's right, it was tough. But I am passionate and I love it, and thanks be to God, I don't be as active now as I used to be, but I don't need to be anymore because we've got great volunteers there.
And obviously there are dimensions to faith that add something to a young person's life that you can't get from just playing football or just having fun. And obviously there's a message you want to communicate. Well, what are the key elements of the message that you want them to learn that will be liberating and energizing for them?
I suppose the main message, and I've heard one of our young leaders, adult leaders, giving it often when he's doing some talks on weekends or there, and he says, these young kids, when they're asked how do you spell love, will spell it T-I-M-E, time. And I think the secret of this faith that we're giving these young people is because they trust us, they talk about God, because we give them the time that's needed to win their trust and win their confidence. And you mentioned earlier, they're hungry for it. In a video way back in 1984, and we have the video where these glue sniffers were being videoed that were coming to our meeting, were being videoed by a team from Extern at the time on a project they were doing. And they asked these people what they felt about it. And this was their answer, one guy in particular, and his lips were nearly glued when he was talking. And he said, these men and women have found our soft spots. See, I believe we all have soft spots. I believe we all have a thirst for the running water. I really do. And certainly in my experience of what we give, which is an explosion of love and care and time to these young people, they can't refuse it. Some amazing stories have come out of this journey in search in Our Lady of Knockin and Curcio that honestly some people wouldn't believe some of the stories. But thanks be to God, there's still people around that can verify them. But yes, they're very, very interested, and they're more interested in passing this on. That's the great game. They want to give it. They want to give it.
And young people are the best evangelizers, ultimately, of their peers.
Also, not only the best, but they're the best at seeing through someone if it's fake. Young people won't let you be fake. Young people will challenge you if you think you're being fake, and you've got to have your answers. But again, we leave that to the Holy Spirit. If somebody's going to put us in a spot about questions and answers, anything about faith, we're firm believers, and we were taught this by a good priest in the diocese again. We're firm believers. If you're going to be doing the work of the Lord, then you need to focus on the Lord of the work. And we spend time with the Lord in the work, and that's why we are as strong as we are. This is a strong outfit, and I'm proud to belong to it. And it has enhanced my faith, as has Curcio, enhanced my faith greatly to become the person that I am today. You know.
And obviously you've had great joy in seeing the blessing that the message has been, that the experience has been for young people who were in difficult situations. I suppose in some ways their situations have changed a lot in this past 35 years. And yet, young people don't change at all. Essentially, there's the same problems.
I heard a young man at our meeting on a particular night with 130 people there, praying for the souls of 10 policemen who were killed in Uri. And this young man had a sister accidentally shot by her boyfriend. And he was a young Republican. And when he was questioned, why are you praying for these people? He says, I prayed for their souls. We have opened up a channel of faith for these young people that nobody can take away again. That young man has passed away himself since, but you know what? He found a deep relationship with God before he did.
and they were much better able then to be citizens in society, parents themselves, members of the community.
Absolutely. And remember, we mentioned it, this was in Craigan, when the bombs and bullets were still flying and the young people were coming from the waterside, from Garda, from Ballymac, to Craigan, through all the troubles, to attend this meeting, which was only, a rosary, a couple of hymns, one hymn in particular, which there's a long story behind, because he lives, I can face tomorrow. I'll never forget that night, but it's for another day. And they were coming there, you had the rosary, a couple of hymns and a cup of tea, and a wee bit of sharing. And they came every week. And the numbers multiplied because it was them who were doing the recruiting. They were the disciples.
I've really been struck since I came to Derry now 7 years ago, just by the level of muscular Catholicism, could I say. The walk to knock, and
Absolutely.
This is not theoretical religion or faith or Christianity. This is very much dealing with the nitty-gritty, and an awful lot of men involved in apostolic work as well.
I think
people who've been through difficult times themselves in many cases.
I look at Derry, and whether it be, and this is not a political statement I'm making, whether it be the Bloody Sunday people that fought for justice, whether it be civil rights that started in Derry, whether it be Curcio that became very strong and maybe started, I think it did start in Derry, things like Corr, Search, different that started in Derry. I look at Derry City, and when I hear the words of that song, that isn't sung so often now, City of God. Do you remember that song,
Yes,
City of God?
yes.
I see Derry City, and I'm proud to say it as a City of God.
And we actually have another big event going on this week, the whole Sister Claire Crockett
Absolutely.
series of evenings. There's a real passion and an energy for a young woman of faith who had a conversion experience.
And if anybody's going to touch the young people, it's going to be a young person like Sister Claire herself. And you can see that anybody who would watch that film, All or Nothing, couldn't leave without feeling something about God in their life. So I think God's been good to us, and I think we need to bite this opportunity when we're given it. And that's why I enjoy doing what I'm doing, and I will do it until it decides I've no more energy left.
Martin, that's a wonderful note to finish on. I think people will be looking forward to reading this book of yours, which is called
Leave the Water Running.
Leave the Water Running. That's now one to tickle your fancy, to keep you interested.
And if I could just say for the people out there, if we're going to finish, look, we never can have enough volunteers. And what we can promise if you come to volunteer here is that we'll put you through, because the new dimensions now is that we're doing OCNs as well.
Yeah.
They train people in faith, they train people in youth work, so there's avenues for those people who are maybe less academically qualified. They find degrees through another channel, and we're offering that in Search. And we're looking for volunteers. Got to be over 18. Got to have some sort of faith base, although we can teach that as well. But if there's anybody out there, boy or girl, and particularly boys, because we seem to have more girls than boys, you're very welcome, and we can guarantee you'll not regret it.
Search Derry on Facebook, is that what it is?
Derry Search Youth Group.
Derry Search Youth Group,
That's
you can
us.
find him.
Yeah.
I think it's getting to the end of our conversation. I really enjoyed that. It all flowed so smoothly, but you clearly have had a lifelong passion, sense of calling, vocation, to share something that you got at an early stage in your life that became clearer when you were 30 then through Curcio, but to dedicate yourself and so much of your free time to working with young people that they might know the love and forgiveness and hope and joy that you experienced yourself. Martin McLaughlin, thank you so much for being with us here this evening. I hope that your book gets a wide audience to read your story, and because there are so many stories that you have given seeds to and sowed water on as well. I hope you've been energized by this wonderful testimony of Martin here, and please God that you can build on what you've heard this evening and look forward to discerning even more clearly your own call in the service of people in this wonderful city, this wonderful country, and this wonderful world. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.